Perhaps on page 42. On page 44, and again, this is a Yehuda composition. I just get such nachas out of all that Yehuda is bringing to us and sharing with us. And over these past 6 years, 7 years now, Yehuda's written 500 pieces, and more will be forthcoming. And we are grateful. We're just very grateful for you.
It's a two-way street. We can't perfect music without doing it live, so without being able to do this, my music would still be in some preliminary stage.
You took care of everybody. Israelites are out. Plagues are over. Crossed the sea. True enough, maybe they didn't win the lottery ticket, but everything is good. That's Ga'al Yisrael. And now on page 45, Hashkivena means for us, right here where we are. So there's a 3,300-year jump from Ga'al Yisrael, which we just sang at the end of the Milchamocha, to here at the top of page 45, just one word apart. I think the goal of the Siddur is to place in our minds the awareness that we're this far away from the Ga'al, the protection of the ancient days. Like one of my favorite preachers in the Sistine Chapel, you know, the fingertips, they're almost those. Someday, folks, someday those fingers are going to touch. We see them getting ever closer. And that's the analogy of the Mikvah. Kamocha Gal Yisrael and Hashkidenu. Now, Kanat Yehuda, you have Hashkidenu tonight?
I think so. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu Leshalom, Hamidenu Malkeinu Lechayim. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu Leshalom, Hamidenu Malkeinu Lechayim. Ufros Aleinu Sukkah Shomecha, Ephraim Shalom, Me'ata Le'olam. Sometimes I lay under the moon, and I thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. Falling negativity surrounds. I know someday it will all turn around, and all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There be no more wars. Our children will ready one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when they feed on the souls hiding innocent, blood-drenched day. But we keep on moving, though the water stayed raging. In this maze you can lose your way, your way. It might drive you crazy, but don't let it phase you. No way, no way. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. Falling negativity surrounds. I know someday it'll all turn around, and all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There be no more wars. Our children will play one day, 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 one day. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu Leshalom, Hamidenu Malkeinu Lechayim. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu Leshalom, Hamidenu Malkeinu Lechayim.
And spread upon us all your sukkah of shalom. Kros aleinu sukkah shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, haparei sukkah shalom aleinu, Yal kol amo Yisrael, Yal Yerushalayim. We're showing at the top of page number 46.
Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדור תמיד עולם. בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תמיד עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תמיד
Yikada, Yikada, Shemei Rava. Yom Adonai B'chayecha v'yom B'chanu Chayecha B'nei Yisrael. V'agala, v'agala, v'bizman karim, v'yaro, amen. Yehi Shmei Ram v'varach, v'olam yom v'yomaya, Yiparach, v'yishtabach, v'yiprakse, v'yidhadar, v'yitale, v'yitalal, Shemei Kedusha, Yeruchu, Leila, Mekabachata v'shirata, Tushbechata, v'yehemata, Ta'iran olah, v'yigeru, Amen. Rise, a few moments of silent prayer. The traditional text before us, pages 47 through 52, or a few moments for our own private silent prayer. This morning, for the first time in 2.5 years, we had a church group come visit Ahavas Chesed. I always enjoy having church groups visiting. It's very important that we be introduced and familiar to and with people of differing faiths here in Mobile. There's a great deal of confusion and suspicion and uncertainty, we might say. And so anytime a church group wants to come in, I do everything I can to accommodate schedules. And although it was a Friday morning, which is usually my busiest day, I said, please. And I asked how long, expecting half an hour. They said 2 hours, and I said, of course, because they've been studying all manner of Hebrew scripture. They had many questions. And we came in, and you may or may not know this, but almost any time, almost every time, when I have a church group, and even sometimes a high school group, one of the first things I do is I explain Yortzeit. And I take them to the Yortzeit album, and I explain what the plaques represent, and how different synagogues have their plaques represented in different ways, architecturally, artistically, with a light bulb, without a light bulb, in the foyer, on the sanctuary walls, it doesn't matter. The point is remembering the traditions of the ancestors and giving honor and showing love to specific people, even if they don't have any family members any longer. And 9 times out of 10, it always grabs them, as it did this morning. And then we came in here, and I explained the artwork. And it's been some time since you and I had a refresher in the artwork. And so today, you need to be reminded. You know the themes and the visual motifs on the windows and on the Aron HaKodesh, but you may have forgotten a critical part of the architecture in this synagogue, both in the sanctuary and in the small chapel. And these are words paraphrased from Aaron Friedman, Ahavas Shalom, and Bert Meisler. In the late 80s, members of a committee went and visited a number of synagogues, Philadelphia and elsewhere, and having interviewed architects and visited synagogues, they met up with one designer in particular in Baltimore, Maryland. And this designer was responsible for the stained glass here in the chapel and the Aron HaKodesh and the small Aron HaKodesh. And the designer is Albert Wood and Sons. And at the time, in the very late 80s, Albert Wood, I'm guessing of blessed memory, was a Christian in his very late 80s with 5 adult sons in the business. And when Albert Wood and Sons first got its start in Baltimore, Maryland, it was designing interiors of churches. And then at a certain point in time in its own history, it branched out and began to do artwork and architectural design interiors for shuls as well. And what I told the members of this church group when they came in this morning is that every time I come into the synagogue and look at this beautiful Aron and all these stained glass here and in the small chapel, what I'm reminding myself is that there were Christian artisans who wanted to do their very best to inspire generations of Jews during prayer. And when I say it in those words, I get a lump in my throat. And it occurs to me that I haven't said that to us, enough recently, that the interior of this synagogue, of course, is the byproduct and the fruit of many involved synagogue committee members over a long span of time and research, but the handiwork is from Christian artisans who wanted Jews to feel inspired during their gathering. And that's the same for both here in the large sanctuary and also in the small chapel. And we should pause for a moment and think about what it means that Christians have come together to help Jews find a voice and evoke something from within the heart. And thereafter, I went on to explain some of the themes and the motifs on the Aron, and they had lots of questions about the menorah, and they had some questions about the Torah, and I handed around a Megillah, and you can touch a Megillah as long as you're careful. And I explained the Megillah, which represents Torah, went through the windows, lots of questions about ancient and modern Israel. And then as we were about to leave, when we were going to walk outside, there was a stumper of a question. And the stumper, I expected many more theological questions, and they said they'll come back, which will be fine, because it'll make me work for a living. But the stumper that I got was, When did you hear the call? And if I had not lived for the past 30 some odd years in Deep South Mobile, Alabama, Bible Belt buckle, I would have somewhat humorously and maybe not too acerbically responded, you mean the long distance call or the short call? But I didn't do that because I knew well enough that many faithful, believing Christians and their pastors speak of hearing the call. And this was an opportunity for me to explain that we as Jews look at the world a little differently. And I pulled out the Chumash, and I explained a little bit about Torah, which we had already touched on. And then I shared a message from tomorrow's Torah reading to answer the question. So allow me 2 minutes of summary of tomorrow's Torah reading, which is a very lengthy Torah reading, but it's familiar to all of us. Because Jacob, who has just stolen the blessing from his older twin brother, runs away in fear of his life, and he ends up in the middle of nowhere, and he has a dream, and he sees a ladder with angels ascending and descending upon it, and then he continues on his way. And of course, there are many ways of understanding what it means to have a vision, a dream with a ladder reaching up to heaven, angels ascending and descending. Maybe it means you're going to experience peaks and valleys, ups and downs. Or maybe it's searching for something beyond the material and the esoteric. Who knows? There are many reasons that we could allay upon that vision of a ladder climbing up to the heavens. But what's striking is that for the next 20 years, Jacob doesn't hear the word of God. He leaves the middle of nowhere, and he arrives in Syria, and he sees a girl, and she takes his breath away. And hopefully, we all know what it means when you look in the eyes of that one special person, and you know you've been changed forever. You've been transformed, and you're no longer the person you once were. And everything is different within you. And you would do anything for that person. Such a transformation. And then he eventually meets a man who becomes his father-in-law, whom he doesn't trust. And he's on the edge for 20 years, navigating the complexities of working with a man who's pretty sneaky and downright smart. And over the course of those next 20 years, he marries a total of 4 different women and has 11 sons and 1 daughter, and accumulates great wealth. But in the back of his mind, he's still drawn to his brother, because there's some unfinished business. And ultimately, he leaves what has become home to go back to make things right. And every one of us can appreciate what it means to have critical and emergent life-altering experiences, such as falling in love, having conflict with close family, changes in career and work and earnings, and knowing there's an unfinished business with the family person. And think about all the transformation within this used to be teenager, and now we'll call him middle age, although no numbers of age appear anywhere in the Torah. And God has not outright called out to him the way you and I might picture Moses as Charlton Heston in the famous movie Hearing No Voice. But still in all, the alteration within this man, Jacob, who's going to become soon Israel, is dramatic and leaves him an entirely different person. And perhaps that's what it means to have the touch of God. Because God is of such an extreme nature that when you and I, in one way or another, experience God, even in a small, perhaps quiet way, we're going to be changed forever. And who would not say that falling in love, and becoming a husband, and a parent, and then maybe even a grandparent, and a son-in-law, and somebody struggling with his entire purpose for life, hasn't been touched by God? And I've asked myself over these many years, am I the right kind of man? Am I the right kind of rabbi? Have I been the right kind of a Jew enough? Am I a good enough husband and father? And I've reached inside myself, and on some occasions over the span of my years, I've not been 100% certain. But I've kept on going, supported by my family, by my community, and to a great extent by our tradition, knowing that I'm not alone in these daily and monumental questions and alterations. Kind of like Jacob. So when this gentleman asked me, tell me about your call, and I shared what I just shared with you, I did so to explain that I didn't hear a voice echoing from the mountaintop the way we sometimes think about Moses or Abraham or Samuel. But maybe every one of us, in his or her own way, does have an interior or internal voice. A question for us as Jews is, do we listen to that voice? And well known, do we say on Yom Kippur, the still, small voice. But it's not limited to Yom Kippur. It pertains every single day. So perhaps the next time that somebody from a certain different background asks you, have you heard the voice of God? You might say, paraphrasing these words, I think God speaks in many different ways. The question is, do we hear? Do we listen? And then we concluded by my escorting them to the Holocaust Memorial, which is here because of the touch of Kayla and Harry Zurumbo, Alayhim Shalom. And some of us remember Kayla and Harry. Harry lost his wife and 3 children and ended up after concentration camps in a DP camp. Kayla lost her husband and ended up in a DP camp after surviving a concentration camp. And they met and married in a DP camp. And they found their way, because one of them was a distant cousin of Ethel Maisel, to Mobile. And they opened a small fruit stand that became a fruit business that prospered. And Harry and Kayla came to the shul board in the early 1970s and said, we want to sponsor a Holocaust memorial. And at the time, Abner Smiles, a shul member, was very active. And Abner, I'm told, was a gifted woodworker in his own right. And so Abner began to work on the Holocaust Memorial. But what you may not remember is that Abner worked in concert with a local Christian artist named John Shaw. And anytime you walk into this foyer and you look at that Holocaust Memorial, which is designed to give honor, to testify to memory, to be memorial to those lives who were stolen from all of us, you're looking at the handiwork of a volunteer shul member who worked with a Christian sculptor so that the agonies of Mr. and Mrs. Zurlo could be a little bit eased. If If that's not a touch of God, those intersections, I don't know what is. Let's open our ears, and we will hear the voice call of God. Just open our ears. We rise with Elenu on page number 56.
On this Shabbat, we remember with great love Isidore Loeb, Evelyn Bloom, Mose Zivitz, Abraham Solowski, William A. Lubell, Philip Silverstein, Bessie Wilson, Barnett Mendelson, Julius Wolf Olinsky, Dora Bell, Al Kahn, David Garfine, Lillian Cohen, Joanne Conlon, Jack Gerwich, Ginny Plotka, Eve Friedman, Max Levy, Rose Beskin, Brandy Gerwich, Lori Kaplan. Any other names to mention this evening? Any other names to mention? Perhaps those at home have a name to share? Those so inclined are invited to rise at this time. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah be'olma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'vizaman kariv v'yimeru. Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach La'olam Olamei Omayah. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yit'aleh, V'yithalal, Shemei V'kudashah, V'rehu, La'ela, Minko V'irchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechamata, Da'ami Ranma Allah, V'yuru, Amen. Yehei, Shalama, Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chayim, Oleinu, V'yalkol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Who said, Shalom and Ramav, Hu ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. A few quick reminders. We'll conclude in just a minute with the Oseh Shalom, another one of Yehuda's compositions, and then we have a little Nash in the social hall, but just a couple of reminders, of course. Tomorrow morning, first, Seth Polanski is reading his Haftorah, marking his bar mitzvah anniversary, and the Polanski family is excited. They're sponsoring a special lunch. We hope people come because we do need a menu so we can chant this Haftorah. That's a big deal, that he wants to mark his anniversary by chanting Haftorah for our show. So, it's okay, it's all right. So, little Seth, he's not so little anymore, but anyway. That's tomorrow morning. Tomorrow evening, Havdalah on Zoom is at 7, as you know. Sunday morning, we'll be going to 2 cemeteries. Sunday afternoon, I should say, 1 o'clock, the unveiling for Bernie Malhov at the Shul Cemetery, Sunday, 1 o'clock. Sunday, 2 o'clock, the funeral for Gabe Fry. And if you have not yet heard, Randy and Liz Fry lost their son, which is a heartbreaking tragedy that nobody should ever experience. No one should know this suffering. And the funeral will be at the Temple Cemetery on Sunday at 2, and many of us have known the Fry family for many, many years. They're very devoted, very active on a variety of levels in our local community. And anything we do and everything we do will be insufficient and not enough. Any gesture we make, any presence that we offer, any attention of being, any words, any hug will be inadequate. And we have to know that. But we have to be there anyway. So that's 2 o'clock on Sunday in the Temple Cemetery. And we'll stop there, and we'll conclude with Oseh Shalom, which is, yes?
Well, something about the nursery school or the...
Next Sunday, which is December 11th, thank you for reminding me, next Sunday, December 11th, we have our first graders, our Sunday school kids. It's called Consecration, which is an American synagogue innovation of the past, probably 3 or 4 generations, welcoming kids into Sunday school. And that will be at 10:30 on Sunday the 11th. And the kids will parade in and they'll sing 3 songs. And the parents and grandparents and everybody else will ooh and ah and say, look how cute. And then we'll have a nosh. And so that's it. It's fun, it's short, it's 10-15 minutes. And that's Sunday the 11th at 10:30 here. It's here. We'd love to have people join us for consecration. And to say mazel tov to the parents of the first graders. So it's the first time we've had consecration in 3 years. So it's a good thing. So we'll conclude with Oseh Shalom, which is our song, our prayer, our hope that there will be peace in the world. Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom B'Mirav, Uyaseh Shalom, Leinu V'Yal Kol Yisrael, Meru Amen, Meru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Mirav, Uyaseh יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ויאמרו אמן, יאמרו אמן. May the one who makes all peace make peace in our world. May the maker of all love give us hearts that care. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromah. Oh, yeah, say shalom. May we all know Shmit Amen. Oh, say shalom, bimromah. Oh, yeah, say shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yimeru amen, yimeru amen.
Yishar Koach. Good Shabbos. Yishar Koach.